Tonight, tackling the cost of living crisis. The government looks at ways to help taxpayers without causing more economic problems. The good cop who turned bad cop. The notorious disgraced former detective Roger Rogerson dies while serving a life sentence for murder. The Florida Governor Ron DeSantis endorses Donald Trump after pulling out of the Republican presidential race. And Alex de Minaur out of the Australian Open, leaving no more locals in the singles draw. Good evening, Jeremy Fernandez with ABC News. The Prime Minister says if the government can help put money back into the pockets of low-income earners, it will. Anthony Albanese is defending calling government MPs back to Canberra nearly 2 weeks before the parliamentary year begins, as the opposition questions the cost of Wednesday's Labor caucus meeting.
The calm corridors of Canberra are about to become crowded.
Most Australians are back at work and have been for weeks. We're back at work and have been for weeks. And part of being back at work is meeting.
The Prime Minister's called his caucus back to the capital early to come up with ways to tackle the continual cost of living crisis. But it's the cost of Wednesday's meeting itself the opposition's questioning.
I don't think it's a very good look, Anthony Albanese, to bring your entire backbench to Canberra at great cost, line up of white cars at the airport to pick them up.
We don't have Parliament by Zoom.
The government is trying to strike a balance between helping Australians manage their soaring expenses while not adding to inflation.
If they make savings elsewhere in the budget, then they're on pretty safe economic ground.
Economists expect a range of measures could be on the table, everything from changes to the upcoming Stage 3 tax cuts to further energy bill rebates or rent assistance.
If we can find ways to put extra dollars in people's pockets, particularly those low and middle income earners who are doing it tough, then we're prepared to do so.
I'm not sure that households should be getting sort of overly excited.
The government's facing a by-election in the Melbourne seat of Dunkley and a public fed up with how much it's paying at the checkout. Anthony Albanese wants to do something about it and show he's doing something about it. Evelyn Manfield, ABC News, Canberra.
He was the face of corruption in the New South Wales police force in the 1980s, and overnight the convicted murderer Roger Rogerson died under guard at a hospital in Sydney. He was serving a life sentence and was 83.
In death, Roger Caleb Rogerson remains divisive.
A lifetime of, in many cases, dishonour to the New South Wales police force. I don't have anything further to say about him.
Rogerson joined the New South Wales Police Force as a teen at a time when organised crime and police corruption flourished in the state.
By the mid-60s, he was being looked at as one of the up-and-coming young detectives.
Those who encountered Rogerson found him to be complex.
I remember a curious mix of menace and charm.
In 1981, Rogerson shot dead drug dealer Warren Lanfranchi, successfully arguing it was in the line of duty. The victim's girlfriend, Sally Ann Huckstep, said the killing was in cold blood.
This is only the first round.
She alleged police corruption and was found murdered in a pond in Centennial Park in 1986. In 1984, Rogerson was linked to the shooting of Sydney Drug Squad officer Michael Drury. He survived and Rogerson was acquitted, but the damage was done.
Shooting armed robbers and drug dealers, that was one thing. A New South Wales police officer being shot in his own home, and I think that's when he really lost a huge amount of support.
The once untouchable detective sergeant was fired in 1986 for misconduct.
Roger was pretty much Teflon coated. It wasn't until he was caught on tape talking with a couple of other crooks about a large amount of money that he was trying to hide that he eventually went to jail for perjury.
His notoriety grew when he was portrayed as a crooked cop by Richard Roxburgh in the 1995 miniseries Blue Murder. He later went on a talking tour with notorious criminal Mark Chopper Reed. By the mid-2000s, Rogerson was back in jail for lying to the Police Integrity Commission. His final undoing came when he and former police detective Glenn McNamara were found guilty of murdering Jamie Gow during a drug deal, a crime largely captured on CCTV. Rogerson was serving a life sentence for the murder when he died in Sydney's Prince of Wales Hospital on Sunday night. He'd been receiving end-of-life care. Penny Timms, ABC News, Sydney.
He was once billed as Donald Trump without the baggage, but his campaign has stumbled at the first hurdle. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, has suspended his campaign for the US presidency, saying he can't see a path to victory. It leaves just one woman standing in the former president's way ahead of the general election against Joe Biden. Here's North America correspondent Carrington Clark in New Hampshire.
Once seen as a top contender, after an unconvincing result in Iowa, Ron DeSantis has been forced to pull the pin.
I can't ask our supporters to volunteer their time and donate their resources if we don't have a clear path to victory. Accordingly, I am today suspending my campaign.
This is an NBC News special report.
The announcement sending shockwaves through the political world.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis just announcing that he will drop out of the race.
Once viewed as the future of the Republican Party, his war on woke strategy wasn't able to pull voters away from Donald Trump. And despite months of ridicule,
10% for Ron DeSanctimonious and 7% for Bird Brain.
He tepidly endorsed his former competitor.
Trump is superior to the current incumbent, Joe Biden. That is clear.
It caps a remarkable fall in fortunes. Just a year ago, DeSantis led several head-to-head polls against Trump.
And Ron is dropping out, and in doing so, he endorsed us.
Even before this endorsement, Donald Trump was well ahead in the polls. But Nikki Haley is trying to convince voters she's a safer bet than her former boss.
Chaos follows him. And we can't have a country in disarray and a world on fire and go through 4 more years of chaos. We won't survive it.
2 days from now, we're going to win New Hampshire, and then we're going to defeat crooked Joe Biden, and we are going to, in fact, make America great again.
There's effectively 2 competitors left in this Republican race, and in less than 2 days, New Hampshire chooses between them. Donald Trump is trying to see off his final competitor, while Nikki Haley is hoping for an upset to extend this battle. But even if she can buy some more time, Donald Trump is the overwhelming favourite to take on Joe Biden at the November general election. Carrington Clark, ABC News, Manchester, New Hampshire.
Israel's Prime Minister has rejected a proposal from Hamas to end the war in Gaza and release hostages. Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas is wanting to impose conditions, including the withdrawal of Israeli forces in Gaza and leaving it in power. Netanyahu is facing mounting pressure to secure the release of the 136 hostages who were still in captivity since October 7th. The health ministry in Gaza says the Palestinian death toll from the war with Israel has now exceeded 25,000 people. A deadly blast at a market in the Russian-held city of Donetsk has killed at least 27 people. Russia is blaming Ukraine for the bombing at the busy shopping area, calling it barbaric. The Ukrainian president says Russia's military campaign has been relentless and strikes in Donetsk have been particularly severe.
Shattered storefronts and broken glass. Locals were on their morning shop at a crowded market in Donetsk when it was shelled. At least 27 people were killed.
A woman was walking. She was wearing a coat which was all riddled with holes.
Locals cover the dead in blankets.
She traded at the market right here, at the store, right here. Half her body was lying under the table. I pulled her out myself. She is gone.
Moscow has called it a barbaric act of terrorism by Ukraine and accused the West of complicity. The Ukrainian president has hit back.
In this single day, the Russian Inhumans shelled over 100 cities, towns and Ukrainian villages in 9 regions. Particularly severe Russian strikes are in the Donetsk region. Unfortunately, there are wounded. There are casualties.
Donetsk was annexed illegally by Russia in 2022, months after Moscow launched its full-scale invasion. The Ukrainian military has been trying to win it back. Hours before the attack in Donetsk, a major gas export terminal near St. Petersburg was targeted by Ukrainian drones. Kyiv is trying to weaken Russian infrastructure, which is already under significant strain as the war grinds on through the winter. Elias Kluwer, ABC News.
Queensland is bracing for tropical cyclone Kirrily to form in the Coral Sea tomorrow. It could cross the coast on Thursday, possibly as a severe Category 3 system. And in a summer of extremes, the state's power grid is being tested as unusually hot temperatures push demand to a record high.
In the far north, the recovery from December's cyclone and devastating flood grinds on. Out to sea, the next threat is brewing. Community volunteers say residents have already copped enough.
I'm a local. Water did go through my house and basically everything took a swim.
Tropical cyclone Kirrily is likely to form tomorrow.
The Bureau has warned that severe impact is likely.
It's expected to make landfall on Thursday before morphing into a rain depression, engulfing much of the state.
So we are expecting quite large areas of Queensland to experience rainfall and heavy rainfall.
In Townsville, emergency preparations are in full swing. Further down the coast, Mackay residents are stocking up.
I'm a bit worried, but my yard is fairly clean at the moment, so I'm pretty happy about that.
The Mayor is concerned about potentially dangerous flooding.
They're expecting somewhere between 800 mils to a metre of rain.
We're in discussions with the ADF about whether they would be able to assist if needed.
Days of oppressive heat and humidity have culminated in blistering temperatures across the state, pushing the power grid to the brink. Authorities say there's enough supply to keep the air conditioners going, but they're urging residents to turn off other appliances if they can. Egg production has taken a hit at this farm. The chooks are just too hot. On the edge of the Simpson Desert, Birdsville hit 44 degrees.
And the sand is so hot, it feels like it's going to melt the rubber in my shoes.
It was a sweltering start to school for these 5 sets of twins at the Gold Coast. A cool change will soon bring an end to the heat wave.
It's very hot, isn't it?
Well, I'm kind of enjoying it.
As Queensland shifts from one extreme weather event to the next. Emma Pollard, ABC News, Brisbane.
A 16-year-old volunteer lifeguard is being praised for her bravery. She rescued a teenage boy who was injured at a popular jumping spot near the Warriewood blowhole yesterday. Saskia Rundle-Trowbridge's patrol captain says her actions were beyond her experience.
In dangerous surf, right against a cliff face. This is a rescue 16-year-old Saskia Rundle-Trowbridge will never forget.
When I woke up in the morning and put on my uniform, it wasn't what I was expecting, but I'm just, I'm happy that I could help.
Minutes into her shift at Warriewood Beach, the lifeguard was sent to 3 teenagers who became trapped in a cave after jumping into a blowhole.
Because of the really rough seas, crashing against the rock face, we weren't able to get close enough to actually pick them up, so it was decided I had to jump in.
When she arrived and learnt that one had hit his head, she explained the plan to get them out. But when the rope on her inflatable became caught, she found herself stuck too.
Pushed against the rocks by the waves until I was able to untangle my rope and free myself.
She then waited for the right moment to swim the injured boy to the boat before he was taken to hospital.
Her actions were just beyond her level of experience, and so very proud of Saskia.
The 15-year-old boy was tested for concussion and is now recovering at home.
That's what we train for and that's what we're here for. Our aim is to keep the people safe.
One act of bravery, unlikely to be her last. Ethan Ricks, ABC News, Sydney.
Coming up on 7:30, the National Rifle Association in the United States on trial for corruption.
This bundle of misdeeds really isn't about ideology or politics. It's about old-fashioned graft.
More than $10 million in improper private jet travel, for example.
Listen to me now.
It has brought the NRA to the brink of financial disaster.
The clean-up of more than 10 tonnes of asbestos-ridden mulch from the Rozelle Parklands will start tomorrow. The majority of the site in Sydney's inner west, including its walkways and bike paths, will stay closed until April. It was shut a fortnight ago after a parent discovered the asbestos in mulch their child took home. The contractor John Holland CPB says it'll pay for the clean-up if it's found to have been responsible. Transport for New South Wales says investigators are looking into a 10-month period during which the contaminated material was delivered.
Laying mulch is one thing, but removal of that mulch from around new turf, new pathways, 4,000 new trees and up to 1 million new plantings will be difficult and will be time-consuming and will require the utmost care.
Authorities are trying to trace the source of a second outbreak of fire ants in northern New South Wales. The ant nest was discovered on Friday just south of Ballina. One theory being tested is whether the ants were brought in from Queensland during a construction boom after the floods.
A painstaking search for a dangerous pest. A nest of fire ants was discovered at Wardell last week after a gardener was badly bitten.
The dogs are going through the school, they're going through the community assembling area, so we're making sure that we're reducing any risk first to the residents here.
It's the second find in 2 months, this time 80 kilometres further south of the Queensland border.
We're a long way from the tracing results that would indicate where the source in Queensland could be, if in fact that's where they came from.
The latest search effort is at a village built to house an Aboriginal community left homeless by the 2022 floods.
The concern will be that there are other nests found, although I'm confident with this reaction that they'll be contained.
The Invasive Species Council predicts more outbreaks across northern New South Wales and wants surveillance ramped up. It's calling for tougher testing of mulch and construction materials coming from Queensland.
Let's be clear here, we have one shot left to stop fire ants. They are spreading rapidly. If we do not get on top of them now, the whole of Australia will pay.
A full-scale outbreak could cost billions, threatening agriculture, tourism and the environment.
I thought they were the size of the old sugar ant, about half an inch or more. And they're so small. They're absolutely insignificant, and I can't believe that these little teeny things can cause so much drama.
So logistically, it's quite complex. It is a war against these fire ants.
Against an enemy that could be hiding in plain sight. Bronwyn Herbert, ABC News, Wardell.
The federal government says a new deal with 2 major gas companies will further guarantee domestic gas supply and help reduce prices. Woodside and Esso have agreed to supply extra gas to the East Coast energy market to become exempt from the $12 a gigajoule price cap on producers. The federal opposition says the government should focus on building more gas plants instead. But the Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, says there will now be pressure on gas producers not to inflate their prices.
There's very substantial penalties under the code for breaching of the code. These producers have undertaken to supply to the Australian domestic market, and that is necessary to keep the downward pressure on prices.
Despite the increasing number of public health warnings, new data shows teenagers are continuing to take up vaping at a rapid rate. The government blames a thriving black market. But as Bethany Alderson reports, it's a market some fear will only expand following a nationwide crackdown.
Many e-cigarettes contain poisonous.
Vaping is highly addictive. It's bad for your health.
More than 200 chemicals.
There's nothing sweet about vapes.
The message about vaping has been coming through loud and clear, but it's not hitting home with many young Australians.
So you go to the bathrooms at school and everyone's like vaping.
Yeah. You try it once and then you're kind of hooked.
Australian governments will spend more than $364 million in the next few years on programs to reduce vaping and smoking. They coincide with new restrictions, including an import ban on disposable single-use vapes.
We went from sort of less than 1% used in 14 to 17-year-olds in 2018 up to over 10% in the most recent figures.
Professor Emily Banks has been advising the government about vaping policy. She says teens interpret the widespread availability of vapes to mean they are safe.
So if we think about what we had to do to control tobacco smoking, it wasn't enough just to say smoking kills. We had to make smoking less available.
But outlawing the supply will also force the closure of vape shops, which are not allowed to sell any nicotine products, prompting fears an existing black market will grow.
You know, crime gangs will find a way to manufacture these products in Australia so they don't even have to come through the border. The problem's just going to continue to get worse.
The only people really who are advocating a model that would regulate and accept these as a way of Australian life are the people profiting from it right now.
Recent data shows the number of daily smokers has more than halved in the past 2 decades alone. The question is, how long will it take to make vapes as unavailable and unpopular? A significant public health problem for a new generation. Bethany Alderson, ABC News.
Security is tight as Hindus gather for the inauguration of a contentious new temple in northern India. It replaces a 16th century mosque which was destroyed by Hindu mobs 30 years ago, leading to riots and thousands of deaths. The Prime Minister Narendra Modi says the new temple is a symbol of unity, but that's not a sentiment shared by the minority Muslim population. South Asia correspondent Avani Dias reports from Ayodhya.
A sea of saffron, the colour sacred in the Hindu religion, has taken over the town of Ayodhya as the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives to consecrate a grand new temple dedicated to the god Ram.
Modi built this temple for all of us. I want to congratulate everyone and ask them to come here to witness this.
Its construction has been contentious. The temple stands on the site of a 16th century mosque torn down by Hindu mobs in 1992. Nevaram Prajapati says he was part of the mob. He rode his bike barefoot for a month across the country to be here.
Modi will do the consecration ceremony. God will give him power and all our goodwill transfers to him.
Demolition of the Babri Masjid Mosque sparked nationwide riots between Hindus and Muslims. 2,000 people died, mostly minority Muslims. In 2019, India's highest court ruled the mosque demolition was illegal, but still granted the site to Hindus.
Now it's an occasion of Hindu unity and it's a spirit of nationalism.
But it's an open wound for many Muslims. Aziz Muhammad's father was killed by the mobs in the 90s. He told his family to stay home until the event is over.
It is like keeping hands on your heart. We cannot do anything else.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is opening this temple now because it's just a couple of weeks from when a national election is due to be called. And he wants to capitalise on this fever and excitement you can just feel in this town and use this to appeal to India's Hindu majority voters.
Cementing what many say is his plan to transform the country from a secular democracy into a Hindu nation. Avani Dias, ABC News, Ayodhya.
Let's take a look at finance now with Alan Kohler.
Well, it was a solid 0.7% rise on the share market today, with banks and retailers leading the way. But it included a couple of nasty prangs. The technology business Appen dropped 40% after Google cancelled an $87 million contract because artificial intelligence can now do what Appen does. And lithium miner Liontown Resources fell 20% because banks pulled a planned $760 million loan, leaving the company scrambling to find someone else who might lend it some money at least. Now, here's why that happened. The lithium prices collapsed 85% in 18 months because demand for electric vehicles and other batteries is nowhere near the boom in supply. Every second mining company has discovered its inner lithium explorer, so it can be a part of the great energy transition. But profits are proving harder to find than lithium. And here's a graph of Appen's share price. Now, 4 years ago, it was a market darling, $42 a share, and it's now fallen 99.3%. Directors have been trying to sell the company, but no takers. And now artificial intelligence is described as an existential threat, and not just to humanity. In happier news, the US share market hit a record high on Friday, largely as a result of the artificial intelligence boom. And the Tokyo market hit a 33-year high, not far off the bubble top of 1990. The Australian market, however, is not at a record high, having fallen 1.5% so far this year, while the US market is up 1.5% thanks to AI. The Aussie dollar is steady tonight at just under 66 US cents. and not much happened on commodity markets. Gold, iron ore and copper up a bit, oil down 1%. And that's finance.
Former Australian tennis players are backing Alex de Minaur to go deeper at a Grand Slam this year, even though he's bowed out in the 4th round of the Australian Open again. De Minaur showed his trademark grit, but it was ultimately overpowered by Russian Andrei Rublev in an exhausting 5-set match.
A heartbreaking embrace.
I'm absolutely devastated because I saw it as a great opportunity and a match that I strongly believe I could have won.
A parochial home crowd still believed, even when de Minaur was down in the deciding set, as his opponent Rublev cramped.
Something's going on with his leg.
The Australian lamenting the chance to take advantage of the Russians' fatigue.
He just let go. He started swinging, and the balls went in.
And then I started to tell to myself, no, you're gonna die today, but you will do everything. And then somehow I started to play better and better.
It was de Minaur's 3rd consecutive 4th round finish at his home slam.
I think we're going to see the best of Alex on grass, to be honest.
Despite the loss, the Australian has plenty of support in his corner.
If it would have been in the US Open or Wimbledon, I think no question Alex would have won that match. It would have then put him in contention to win the slam.
Can he win a Grand Slam?
Oh, definitely. I'm not sure if it's in 2024, but I think he can.
I think that he has the game now. I think he has the belief, and I truly think that he has made tweaks to his game that we've all seen over the last month.
The dream run of Nuno Borges is over after the Portuguese world number 69 lost to Daniil Medvedev. Top seeds in the women's draw continue to fall.
The qualifier is into the quarterfinals.
World number 93 Diana Yastremska knocked 2-time champion Victoria Azarenka out in straight sets.
Well, this is desperately unlucky for Svitolina.
And Alina Svitolina lasted just 3 games before a back injury forced her to retire. The emotional exit of the 19th seed sent Czech teenager Linda Noskova to her first ever Grand Slam quarterfinal. Tom Maddox, ABC News, Melbourne Park.
Let's take a look at the weather now. And Tom, some cool relief today, but it looks like it's not going to last.
Jeremy, temperatures today were as much as 15 degrees cooler across our state, but Sydney was back there to the mid-20s. However, a heat wave will engulf our state this week, becoming severe across most central and northern regions between Tuesday and Friday. Now, during the peak of this heat around Thursday, the coast can expect maximums in the mid-30s, while the west will soar to the mid to high 40s. And it's a reminder we live on a warming planet. The World Meteorological Organization has consolidated 6 leading data sets used to monitor the global temperature. And all 6 show 2023 was the hottest year on record, only a fraction of the Paris Agreement target of 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. A southerly buster brought relief to Sydney last night, though. It arrived at 10 p.m. and produced wind gusts up to 80 kilometres per hour at the airport. Low cloud then moved in behind the change off the Tasman Sea and held today's high to 25 in the city, 1 below average and 9 below yesterday. Penrith's top of 25 was 6 below average and 14 below yesterday. Now, statewide minimums were up to 6 above average in the north ahead of the change and up to 7 below average in the southwest behind the change. The southerly moved to the north coast this morning. It reached Byron Bay at around midday, although it lagged over the northern inland, leading to the warmest day in over 3 years for a handful of locations. That included 43 at Moree and 33 degrees in Armidale. Now, on the satellite, there's some low cloud on our coast. It's bringing just the odd light shower, and a pocket of storms formed right near the Queensland border this afternoon. On the chart tomorrow, well, this high will direct onshore winds and a few light showers onto our coast. Well, there's a tropical low in the Coral Sea that should intensify into a tropical cyclone. Now, around the country, very hot for Adelaide and the Alice, heading for 41. Canberra, mostly cloudy and 25. And for the northeast tomorrow, a medium chance of showers on the north coast and ranges. It's grading to only a slight chance of a shower for the Hunter Coast and then looking dry further west. For the southeast, a medium chance of showers on the coast and eastern ranges, mostly in the morning, then clearing up in the afternoon. Should be dry further west though. Yes, a top of 30. To the west, mostly sunny and hot. Low 40s in the northwest, but the peak of the heat wave in a few days will bring maximums around 5 degrees warmer. The winds will average around 20 knots off the waters, seas up to 1.5 metres. Now for Sydney, staying mostly cloudy tomorrow, the chance of a light shower in the morning, easterly winds. Temperature range 20 to 26 for the city, top of 23 on the beaches, around 25 to 26 for the west. The sun will be up at 6:06 and ahead. Sunny with warm northerly winds returning Wednesday, 30 to 36. Partly cloudy, hot on Thursday, 35 to 39, slight risk of a storm. Hot again Friday, that's ahead of a thundery cool change in the afternoon, Jeremy.
Tom, thank you. Here's Laura Tingle for you now with 7:30.